What sellers need to remember is your goal is to build a sustainable brand. You want to make your product at a point where you can exit or just keep on growing.
Welcome to the Post-Purchase Pro Podcast.
This is the only podcast that dives deep into post-purchase marketing to help Amazon sellers increase sales, ranking, reviews, and profits. It's everything that happens after the initial sale that makes a difference. We call this the back end.
This is the Post-Purchase Pro Podcast, and today we have a very special guest from Z, Daneel. Z is a branch manager for Z, which helps Amazon sellers like yourselves grow by expanding their reach through different markets. So first of all, Daneel, thanks so much for joining us today. Tell us kind of how you got into Z, what your background is, and then let's jump into what you guys do over at Z and how you help Amazon sellers grow.
Hi, Seth. Thank you so much for having us. Quite a fully loaded question, but I'll break it down. So just in terms of my involvement in Z, I actually joined the parent company called the VAT IT Group, which is the world's largest regulation tech company, about a year and a half ago. Ironically, I'm an e-commerce brand seller myself. I own a Shopify brand here, so I actually wanted to go into tech a bit instead of e-commerce. And lo and behold, within that, I was part of the initial team of 5 that looked at giving this import logistics and compliance services that we offer in the tech and medical space to e-commerce. So about a year and a half ago, Z was as small as a brainchild of 4 people, and now we've grown to over 80 full-time employees here based out of South Africa.
Yeah, that's amazing. So it's zee.co is your guys' website. So Daneel,
Yes.
You've been working with them for some time, but you also have experience yourself. So from your perspective and from what you guys are seeing, like from the data, what's the opportunity like for a seller that's only selling in one market, or just selling in the US, but has the opportunity to expand kind of globally? What are you seeing?
I think being an entrepreneur myself, and I think most sellers are themselves one, I think there's that bit of an edge of asking them, but why not? I think people are so scared of going global because of all the red tape, the compliance and logistic issues, that they are missing out on a pot of gold that is markets such as Germany and the UK. I mean, most sellers that I know are selling in the US, which is by far the most competitive market in the world. By going global and looking at tapping into markets such as Germany and the UK, you are opening yourself up for way less competition because of the barriers of entry. So from my side, it's so important to diversify, and why not by going into new markets?
Yeah, exactly. So I think one of the hurdles that we have as American sellers is that it's very comfortable for us to stay where
Mm,
the language is easy for us, right? Like going to
mm.
the UK is easier because we understand the language somewhat, right? So, but I think there's a big opportunity to go where the language is a little bit more challenging. Like you're saying, Germany is a huge opportunity. Well, Germany's a bigger opportunity, most likely, because it's a little bit harder. Are you seeing the same thing?
Yes, no, exactly, Seth. I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like I said, I think Germany, the customs is such a nightmare. So people are so scared to enter. Obviously, to be able to sell in Germany, you need to be able to import the goods there. That's where Z comes in. I think I'm just going to quickly touch on what our
Yeah.
service is for this for your audience. Basically, Z consists out of 4 main pillars that we offer. We offer VAT registrations, product compliance, import compliance, and then the logistics. By doing this, we are a one-stop shop for sellers that want to look at expanding into new markets. We are your outsourced agency of making sure that you have one point of contact for all of your global expansion.
Yeah, that's great. So Daneel, so I'm a seller. I sell in the US and I want to go and sell in the UK and sell in Germany. What do I do to engage you guys? And then do I have to do anything? How does this process work with you guys?
So I think firstly, and I always love jumping on a call with sellers because I think it's so important to make an educated decision. What I would suggest is looking at the product you have and obviously analyze with whatever tool you're most familiar with and what what the competition is looking like in Germany. Now, secondly, you need to make sure that you've got a partner that can help you with your translation. Now, translation doesn't just mean you type it in on Google,
Yeah.
translate and use that. I think that the terminology that people don't understand is it's called localization. So what that means is you need to get someone that helps you translate your listing so it makes sense to those sellers. For instance, the way color is spelled in the US and the UK is different. So if you are spelling it incorrectly, you'll miss out on key PPC bids and people won't find your products what needed. So that's the one thing you need to take into consideration. But then regarding the supply chain, Z would be your one-stop shop. So my first suggestion would be, let's get your VAT registered. I think it is a seamless process for sellers. It's also not the most expensive thing in the world to do, but that gives you the first sort of hurdle of being able to sell. If you are going to sell in the UK or Germany or any market, I'm not sure if your audience is familiar with VAT, but it's similar to sales tax in the US, but it's a higher percentage and it's also compulsory. So it's not like in the US where you don't have to register for it. In the UK and the EU, that's actually mandatory. So that's step one. And then step two would be to start making sure that we analyze your products and make sure you have everything you need to be ready for import and compliant in terms of the product.
Yeah, that's a great question. So Daneel, when should a seller start looking at global expansion? Like, is there a threshold for sales? Is it a certain level of maturity, age? What are you looking for typically? What are you seeing as like the most successful stories where, I take it from a single market and I expand?
I think it's all about how you want to grow your business. I think that we've had sellers, and I've worked with people that aren't nearly as big as some of the sellers that's listening today and thinking, well, it's definitely not me speaking to, all the way to working with aggregators and top 100 sellers. But I think the question you have to ask yourself is, I think it's your responsibility to make sure you are winning in your market. So make sure that you have penetrated the US market. I don't think people should overestimate how much they can just make in the US. I mean, some of the best sellers are still only sticking to it.
Yep.
But I think the moment you are seeing slower growth within your market, when there's too much competition, when you're struggling with some of the Chinese trying to duplicate your listings, when you're having problems, it's so important to start looking at making sure you're building a continuity plan outside of that one market. So the moment you do, or you can win, I think it's needed to take the next step, even earlier than that. But I suppose it's all risk appetite and what your current budget is for investing in stock.
Yeah, I love it. So, as you're growing in the U.S. market, say for instance you're a brand growing in the U.S. market, like Daneel said, when you start to kind of run into a limiter based on the competition, then it makes sense to try to expand into these other channels, especially if you have a well-developed product line and that product line is kind of starting to max out in terms of growth. Then it makes sense to take that same product line and to expand the reach. After, of course, you do a little bit of research and see if the same market is viable. So, Daneel, we actually expanded into the UK several years ago, and it went really, really well. But when we expanded into Canada, the market wasn't the same for that particular product. So it kind of depends on product market
Yes.
fit, culture, all of it, right? So you need to do your research, but when you're growing and your product line starts to get a little bit more mature in the American market, one of the best ways is to globally expand. So I love what you guys are doing. So Daneel, what do you see as like the biggest mistake that sellers are making as they consider this, or maybe try to do this on their own? What are you guys seeing as a big mistake?
I think sellers a lot of times are very hesitant to change the mindset from I can do everything myself, because they don't realize that their most valuable asset is time. And by fighting with customs, by trying to do it yourself, by trying to find the cheapest freight forwarder that has no idea what he's doing, with not doing proper compliance work for your products and import, the time that you've wasted could have been utilized so much better.
Yep.
A, for your own sanity, but B, for developing your brand. I think what sellers need to remember is your goal is to build a sustainable brand. You want to make your product at a point where you can exit or just keep on growing and take it into into new kind of spheres. And I think that's so important for sellers to realize how much time am I spending on it. If you are getting your goods shipped across the world easily, which is a rarity, but if this is what you're doing, great. There's no need to use Z. But I think when you are wanting to tackle these new challenges of new markets, it's so important to have someone take your hand and guide you, because you'll make a lot of errors by trying to do it yourself.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. So a lot of our audience understands this. So we at Post Purchase Pro, we actually do our service done for you because of exactly what you're talking about. I mean, you can give information, but if you can't execute because you don't have the time
Yes.
or you don't have the know-how, it makes it a lot more challenging, and you end up spending more money and time, so it's a waste. So Daneel, what is the best way, before I get into the last few questions here, what's the best way for people to kind of connect with you? I don't know if they should be reaching out to you specifically, or how should they engage with Z if they're thinking about expanding globally?
So I think for me, I always love chatting to sellers, and for us, we have a business model where we do free consultations. For me, it's always great to meet sellers and hear their challenges, because that's how I upskill myself and overcome the knowledge barrier by not interacting. So they can send me a personal mail, DANEELSTE@z.co. I'll make sure, Seth, that you can put it in the show notes as well. They can send me a mail directly. They can type their heart out and I'll respond to set up a call with them. Otherwise, they can always just visit our website, z.co, inquire on there, have a look on what we do, and then that will be allocated to someone in our team.
That's perfect. So we'll have Daneel's contact information right there in the show notes, right below this video. If you're watching it on a social platform or YouTube. Also, Daneel, we ask 2 questions every week that we love to hear the answers of. You are an entrepreneur yourself. So what is your favorite business book?
So I think it would probably be 0 to 1 from Peter Thiel. I think that was something you can read yearly again. And a bit of a cringier book, but I think the value it added to me long term was great, is How to Win Friends and Influence People from Dale Carnegie. It was just a book that I think taught me a lot of soft skills that I've used throughout my life. So that would be my answer.
2 great recommendations. The second book that you mentioned there definitely changes your perspective on interacting with people, doesn't it?
The title just isn't as great. I think How to Make Friends doesn't sound like it's supposed to be your favorite book, but unfortunately, call a spade, it is.
Yep, exactly. All right, and one more question here, Daneel. This is always a fun one. What is like your favorite splurge purchase that you've made in your life? Like, what have you thought, well, maybe I shouldn't buy it, but you went ahead and did, and then you actually really enjoyed the purchase?
So I think you would have had AirPods a lot before, so I'm going to try something else. But I do love my AirPods way more than I ever thought. And I lost my first pair, and I just ended up buying my second a week later. So every time I open my AirPods, it connects and it says #AirPods2. So it hurts a bit knowing that I've lost them before, and I'm giving Apple a lot of money. So yeah, let's keep my answer concise. That would be it.
Daneel, that was funny. So my business partner, Sean, who is giving the presentation in Paris right now, who can't be here, we kind of got AirPods a few years ago, and we were, very, very much Apple fans. We had Macs and we had iPhones, and the AirPods, for whatever reason, were like, it's still like one of my favorite products ever because it just works so well. And here's a hack for you, Daneel. You can actually change your name of your AirPods so you don't have to get that little jab every time.
I think it keeps me humble, safe.
There you go. All right, Daneel, thanks so much, guys. Check out zee.co. You can reach out to Daneel directly in the show notes below. But if you want to expand globally, if you're ready for growth, now's the time to at least have a conversation, see what it's all about. Don't try to do all of the heavy lifting, all the regulations yourself. It's much, much easier to deal with somebody who specializes in the area. So thanks so much, Daneel. Any parting words of advice before we jump out of here?
Don't lose your AirPods, safe.
I would never do that, Daneel. All right, thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Cheers, safe.
Bye.